What's up, everyone on YouTube? It is InDriver KG.
I'm Tin Man.
All right, and today we are going to try and disassemble this car and get the head studs on, head gaskets, block inserts, all that stuff, and we're going to explain why you need these things. What's up, everyone? So before we start, we're just going to show you a little bit of the roads on the way down to Georgia, and then we'll start with the install, disassembly process. So enjoy this little montage. All right, so as you guys know, we've had this car for almost a year, and the original plan with the original car was to take that as far as possible with the DCT. But unfortunately, we didn't get that far, so now we are with the manual transmission model, and we are this far with a hybrid turbo, and we're going to go with the N75 HT400 to see what that has. To the head gasket, because if you didn't hear in the last video, I did have some coolant purge, so that means that we're starting to get a little head lift because of the high boost that happened among turning up to around 27-28 psi. So with that being said, we're going to explain to you why, if you have stock head gaskets, stock studs, no inserts, all that stuff, why it is important to not go that high up in boost or stay in a certain threshold, or if you're going to go that high and you plan to get a hybrid or a big turbo, whatever setup you want to do, you have to do it the right way. All right, so among saying that I was going to do all this stuff, Tin Man had reached out to me and actually gave me a lot of insight about why these other parts are needed when going with a hybrid. So I'll have him explain what the need is for the head gasket, what head gasket to get, the block inserts, and what head studs and bolts to get, because it's not going to be just the APR from GenRacer. It's going to be the 4B11. So
All right. So first off, let me show you what the problem with these lifting the head is that the aluminum that the block is made out of isn't the greatest. So you've got a small stud. Actually, you have one of those studs right here. Small stud.
oh, wait 1 second. There we go.
You got a very small stud screwed into some kind of cheap aluminum that the block is made out of, and it doesn't have a lot of holding power. Let me show you a little bit. You've got this amount of thread, and it's a fine thread, right? Screwed into the block. So right here, you got that screwed into the block. It's not going to have as much gripping power as something, for instance, this size, right? You've got this screwed into the block versus that screwed into the block. You can see the difference in the diameter. This is 5/8 inch round, and it's coarse thread. It's going to grab that aluminum so much better. So we're going to drill the block out, put these inserts, screw these down into that aluminum, and then your ARP stud screws into that, and now you have this amount of hold versus the small fine thread that's on the stud itself. I use these studs, or the other studs, the 8740s from ARP, I pulled the threads right through the block, anything over about 28 psi. If you're running stock OEM head gasket and stock studs, I don't recommend going over 27 psi. You will lift your head. If worst case scenario, you blow your head gasket and then you've got oil mixed in with your coolant and vice versa, and you're limping it home if it'll drive at all. Best case scenario is that you purge a little bit of coolant from your reservoir and you know that you've lifted your head and you got some pressure in your coolant system.
Yep, that's happened to me.
Yeah, it happened to me too. The first time it happened to me. Second time I went back, put an OEM gasket in. I used ARP 8740 studs, not the 8740s, which are about the equivalent of a stock OEM head bolt. They're about the same strength. And I pulled the next time I lifted the head, I pulled the threads through the block. So I went back in again, put the correct Cometic 4-layer gasket in there, ARP studs, but I use these block inserts and put them in, and they hold. You're not going to overboost these block inserts. You'd have to be running more than what the bottom end of this motor is capable of to pull these studs through. So,
and just so you know, the actual part number is going to be right here.
These are for an Evo 4B11, Mitsubishi 4B11. They also work for Genesis and Hyundai ends but they are the exact same size, diameter, threading, everything. But they are made out of aged 625 plus material. What I like to call unobtainium, because it's expensive. These studs are about $500 versus the 8740s that I bought previously for about $200. But I stretched the 8740s. I run over 30 psi, and even with the block inserts, the other studs are only about as strong as the stock bolts. So I stretched them and lifted my head again to where I started. If I run over 28 psi now, I purge coolant. So these you're not going to stretch. No matter what you put at it, you're not going to stretch these studs. So these are the ones you need to buy. Don't buy. There you go, 207 4207, and you'll see it says Mitsubishi 4B11.
Yep. Go, installation tool. So I'll leave a link. I will leave a link in the description where you can pick this up from either Generacer or Amazon. I got these from Amazon and it came in about 2 to 3 business days. So you can pick wherever it's going to be around the same price. And these are the ones that we're going to recommend. Now, another thing that I wanted to touch on, as you guys know, I had a little bit of a rough patch with Lap3, I believe last month sometime, about the whole 60 to 130 thing, and it was getting blown out of proportion here. So for you guys that don't know, he is tuned by Lap3. And
I'm not officially sponsored, but you can kind of say that because I did the R&D. I got the first Kona tune from them. Did the R&D on the Stage X. We've tried some different things with launch control and all that. I run their methanol system. I'm currently Stage X methanol tuned and the fastest Kona in the world, right? So proud Lap3 owner and representative, but I don't believe in all. I'm a car guy. He's a car guy. Car guys help each other. And in my community, it doesn't matter what you drive, who you're with. If a car guy needs some help, you help. Our in community could be stronger than Hondas and Mitsubishis and everybody else out there if we could quit bickering in between the tuner groups here. You know,
absolutely.
It's the being represented or using one person's tune doesn't involve. You're not in a cult, right?
Yep.
So you can run someone else's tune and still do 20 hours worth of labor on someone's car to help them out. We're car guys. Do car guy stuff. Help each other out. Quit the bickering and fussing online. I'm Lap3. He's N75. I used to be tuned by N75, right? I got no hate there. I just like the tune that I have. So I have these studs, which also you need to include a link for those. Is Hun Solutions, but it's
that's right.
Weird.
Yep.
So
I'll leave a link for that. Yep.
I'm the only guy I know so far that put the block inserts in there, and I try new things with my car all the time, at the risk of my car, granted. And some have been successful, some haven't. But now that I have this knowledge, I'm passing it on. I'm not just passing it on to Lap3 guys so we can get out there and run higher boost than everyone and dominate or anything like that. It's not that like that. Car guys help car guys. He needs this. We're doing it.
Yep, and I appreciate him for that. And I also want to take the time to thank James for reaching out to me. I'll leave a link for his channel, but we talked, and he's actually going to try and make it to the KDM Cars and Coffee that we got going on the 8th, and I'll leave that picture right here so you can get all the information, and that's going to be at 12 o'clock in Sayreville. So it is a pretty decent size lot. So if you got any questions about that, you can reach out to me on Instagram. That's InDriverKG, the same thing as YouTube. And also, I'll leave a link for his YouTube channel.
Or Instagram. I'm not a
Instagram? Okay.
Gapopotamus on Instagram.
All right, and I'll leave that right here, and you guys can check him out. So let's get on with the install. All right, so what we did so far, we removed all the electrical connectors, removed the hose that goes from here to the intercooler, and that's another thing. We're going to do a intercooler install for Whoosh Performance. That's right there. And what you're going to want to try and do is take off everything up top. So like I said, for now, we just remove this stuff and the hose, and I'll get key points that you're going to need to know to get all of this off. So again, that's most of the electrical connectors over here too. I undid this, and what he was telling me is no matter what you do, there is a way to bleed the coolant out the bottom, but you have to take all the connectors off that's around. So your water pump, your thermostat housing, all that, those areas are going to hold some coolant, and you're still going to get a mess. So what you're going to want to do is just undo those, keep some type of cloth or something, some boxes or something under there to gather some of that if you're doing it inside a garage. So just keep that in mind. All right, so this is where we sit right now.
Look, it's cams.
I wish. They even make cams for these? No? Right.
I'm not.
All right, and just to show you guys all that's being installed, the inserts that he showed, those are the head studs. This is the HT 400 with no branding. So you see it has 9 blades instead of 6. This is going to be for the intercooler. This, I believe, is the trans adapter. It's going to go under the battery. This is the RTS clutch under here, and the coil packs with the N75 branding on it. So that's what we have right there. All right, so he has the subframe out, and he kept the 2 motor mounts on. So
it rocks.
Yep. Look at that. Imagine in a good amount of years, some guy's car is going to be moving just like that because you need a motor mount. I've seen it. So, here we go. Now he's just working on the turbo right there. And I do believe you can take it out from the top, but...
If you remove the valve cover,
yeah,
you can pull it from the top, but...
Yeah, as you see, we have the hood off here. And you can see right into there. But again, it's better because you can't reach the bottom ones from up here.
So much easier. It takes 45 minutes to drop the subframe, and you will fight it longer than that trying to get that intake out and our valve cover out and do it from above.
Yeah. But as you see, there's still more things to move, and then we get to that. So he's working on the turbo, and like he was explaining to me, the top one that's right there, that is for oil.
Oil inlet.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have water inlet or coolant inlet, coolant outlet, and then underneath on the bottom back here, a little steel pipe that goes down behind the manifold is your your oil exit, oil return. It goes down to the bottom of the pan.
All right, and soon we are going to do the wastegate. So that's the external that's going to replace the stock one that's electric. I believe with that it holds boost better, like a lot better, because these like to fall off sometimes.
Yeah.
But as we go here, because the time lapse did die out, so mostly all of this. Let me just get a nice little back and forth of everything that's moved. Alright. Back under he is going. Again, that's the whole subframe out.
Swivel the motor up a little bit, makes it easier, but I forgot that.
Yeah, let me see if I could do that. Is there any way to...
Ooh, hello, cool it right in the face.
Okay, so here's the old turbo, and the new one is there. Let's check this thing out. I'm gonna get this off to check if it had any play, but let me show you what that one looks like in there. All right, so what we're gonna do is just get this off. There's 3 of them. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand. All right. what we want to check. Make sure there's no back and forth. No, it's good for here. There you go. This thing is naked right now.
Naked.
This is just a bare long block at this point.
Still got to pull the valve tappet with
Yeah.
valve tappets and 10 head bolts, and this thing's coming off.
Yep. Look at all of
Normally,
this.
normally we wouldn't put. If you're just taking the head off and putting a new gasket on, you wouldn't have to pull all the valve tappets. But because we're going to flip this thing over and check it with a straight edge and a light and a feeler gauge to make sure it's not warped, you turn it over, those valve tappets fall out. You're screwed because each set of these is a different size, and you will have to put the cams back in and check tolerances and clearances to figure out where all 16 of them go. So better just label them and take them out right now and not have to deal with it.
Wow. So you're definitely going to take this to someone who knows or can get an understanding of this stuff.
Exactly. This is my second time. I know what I'm playing. I watched a YouTube video.
Oh, man. Now, most of you guys are going to be doing that, but...
Right. Right. Don't do this. I was just telling him, if you look under the car, around the car on the table, the amount of stuff you have to take off of this. The engine's being supported by a jack and one motor mount right now. You take off the exhaust, the subframe, the downpipe, the turbo, everything off of this side, water pump, timing cover, balancer. You got to take the intake, the injectors, every valve cover, everything on this car has to come off and out. And it is a ridiculous amount of work. And if you are a shade tree mechanic, take this to a professional. If you're a mechanic and just never done this before, by all means, watch this video, learn what you can, and run with it and teach others. But this is not a weekender, like I've changed my plugs and my wife's oil a couple times kind of job.
Yeah. And that's the type of mechanic I am. I am not that guy to do this. I am not that guy.
But if you are that guy, do it and do it for others.
Yep.
That's what we about.
Yep. Man, check out all of this. Remember, guys, each of these, you want to number them. And what I mean by that, these, when you pull those out, 16 of them, number them, do not lose them. And then also,
And do not get them in the wrong order either, because they are all individually sized. When you go to pull your head studs or out, your head bolts out, you're going to use a Torx bit. This is a number 12 Torx bit. And you can get every one of these head studs out, or head bolts out, with this Torx bit. And there's a very small hole here. I mean, if you put in ARP studs, the studs have a 12.13 millimeter nut that goes on them, and you will not be able to get a 12 millimeter down in there. It is, or it's a 13 actually, sorry. 13 millimeter 12 point. So if you have a 13 big for this little indention right here, no matter how thin a socket you have, you're not going to be able to get these two nuts on to those ARP studs with a standard 13 mil socket. So you have to buy a 13 mil, and they literally call it a head bolt socket. But you need, they make them in 6-point and they make them in 12-point. You need a 12-point head bolt socket in a 13 millimeter, and it has this narrow shank in there which allows you to get in here and angle it and get this up inside this little small indention right here that you can't fit a socket or extension in. So if you're using ARP studs, buy a 13 millimeter 12-point head bolt socket.
all right. You said, where did it blow?
See all, you got this sealant all the way around on every port in here, but you're missing it right here and it's peeled up. That's where you see how that's just flaking away?
Yep.
And the rest of it's solid. That's where you lifted right there.
Wow. Just like that, and you guys, you really won't know until you see coolant all over there purging from your expansion tank.
And 100% of the time, if you blow a head gasket, it can blow. What you don't want it to do is blow between an oil port and a water jacket. If it does, then you've got oil and coolant mixing together. It stays within the system, but it mixes together, and then you got to flush your entire coolant system, and you got to get the water out of the engine, and you're looking in like bad shape. Best case scenario is what happened here, and it blew here and then got fluid inside the water jacket. If you look underneath here, what coolant flows through this trench right here all the way around. And what happened is it blew the gasket here, or lifted it, and it got just enough right here into this little hole, and that got inside. It pressurized it. It don't take much. The cylinder pressure made it to that little hole, pressurized the coolant system, and you were still able to drive. And at 99.9% of the time, it's going to be on cylinder 2 or 3, because the head will warp in the middle, pull in the middle before it pulls on the outside.
Wow. And right when I noticed that, because I did smell it happen, it was at nighttime, and I seen just a little mist of steam come up on that side. Luckily, I had this off so he can escape, but I saw that night that it happened. I did not get on it again since.
Yeah, that's your only, it's the only imperfection.
And this happened because of me turning it up to around 28 pounds of boost, 27, around there, and I was beating on it. So,
and it is not the tune. A lot of people say, and I don't care who the tuner is, it's not the tune. When you lift a head, if you blow a gasket or you over boost or something like that, that can be in the tune, right? But when you lift a head, it's the shitty aluminum, excuse my French, it's the crappy aluminum that these blocks are made of. Your head bolt goes right here, and there's not a lot of space for threading in there, and the threading is all the way down inside. It's about 3 inches. This hole's about 3 inches deep, and it's just crappy aluminum. And that bolt is just going to pull. It's just going to lift a little bit. It'll either stretch the bolt or it will pull the threads through the aluminum. And that's the point in enlarging that hole, drilling them out and putting much larger inserts in there, and using a much stout, like heavier duty bolt or stud, is because the aluminum in these blocks aren't built for anything over about 26, 27 psi.
wow.
You might get away with it a few times. I did, but eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Oh yeah, it always does. Okay, so you just want to explain that to me one more time about,
Let me get this out.
yeah,
real quick.
these rivets right here. The stock gasket doesn't have it, and that's the 4-layer. You guys can see right here.
You can take it out of there if you want to, like take it out and lay it in place, and it'll be.
All right, so there we go.
All right, on these gaskets, the stock head gasket doesn't have these rivets right here holding them together. They're just laminated together with glue, essentially. With this gasket, when you put it on here, you're going to see this rivet lines up with this little hole right here. It doesn't go to anywhere, but when you sandwich that head onto here, that rivet's not going to interfere with anything. This rivet actually lines up with this little divot in here too, right? So when you sandwich that head in there, it's not going to affect anything. This rivet, there's a void behind it. This one, however, sits right on top of a flat piece of block. And if you sandwich that head down on top of this, you could have like a gap here, essentially all the way, this whole area, because the head's being held up by that rivet. There is a divot in the head in this area, but for peace of mind, because it's going to bend this gasket up into that, what I always do is get this gasket in place, mark that, center punch it, and then take a drill bit and just drill a little divot in here, similar to this one over here where this rivet sits. And that way the gasket will remain flat even when the head's pushing down on it, and you're not going to risk any rupture. All right, with this jig that comes from Hun Solutions, it comes with an alignment dowel that you put in here, and you line the dowel up. The dowel is tapered, so it goes into the hole like that, and you press down on that until it's centered in the hole, and then this will be loose. You move this around until you've got everything lined up and tighten this down, and then you can remove the alignment dowel. This bushing that's in there right now is perfectly sized for the drill bit that you're going to use, and it keeps the drill perfectly straight up and down while you drill the hole. Once you drill the hole to depth, then you'll swap out that bushing for this one, and when you put this bushing in here, this one is perfectly sized for the tap that will go down there, and it keeps the tap perfectly aligned all the way to the bottom. So it's a Really nice setup. Make sure, because if you were just to try to drill these and tap these by hand, it would be crooked or offset. So this jig keeps everything perfectly aligned.
And then there's a T that comes with it, right? That goes down in there.
Oh, you talking about the slide gauge?
Yeah.
Yeah, you set your slide gauge to the depth, but it won't go in there now because it's too big for the hole. But once you drill the hole, you set this slide gauge to the depth of the head. You go over to the head and set this down in there. This slides up and down. And you set this to the depth that you need it, and then slide this down in the hole and check your depth.
All right. Nice. We got a nice line up here. Pretty nice turnout too. See that right there. And the speed of the turbo too